Good evening, everybody, and welcome to the first Noble Company podcast of 2023. My name is Roanne Smith, and I'm your host, and it is a pleasure to have you with us this evening. For those of you who are not familiar with the podcast, it is a podcast that focuses on contemporary topics in business, and we feature entrepreneurs and academics and experts from across the world. Now, today we have the pleasure of having a very good friend of mine on the podcast who is an expert in all sorts of different areas. If you would have seen the promotion for the podcast, you would have gotten a little bit of information about her through her bio, but I'm actually going to introduce her right now so that she can share a little bit about herself. So, Lesley.
Hi, Rowan. Good evening,
Good
everyone.
evening.
Thank you so much for having
Hi.
me. Hey.
It's my pleasure. I present you Dr. Lesley Reece. And Lesley, would you just share a little bit about yourself?
Okay, sure. Thank you. So I am born and bred Barbadian, and Rowan and I actually went to both primary, which some of you may know as elementary school, and secondary or high school together. I am a medical doctor by profession. My areas specifically are general practice and palliative care. For those of you who are not familiar with palliative care involves the care of patients who are dying or suffering from life-limiting illnesses. I've been doing palliative care for the past 7 years this year, but I've been a medical doctor for 16 years this year. Well, time flies. But more recently, I started doing coaching, mindset coaching specifically, with my areas of expertise being self care, boundary setting, self love, which are all intertwined. Hence the name for today's podcast episode.
Yeah. So thank you for sharing. And let's look at the topic for today's episode. It's self-care, more than just spa days. And the reason that we chose this topic is because when people think about self-care, often they think about getting manicures and pedicures and massages. But self-care is actually a lot more than that. So can you tell me exactly what self-care is?
Sure. So, in a nutshell, self care involves showing up for yourself. Okay. So, that means taking care of the physical aspects of your well being, emotional, mental. And very often, I like to remind people that self care is more than just spa days because there's so many of us who, when we think about self care, we automatically associate it with going for a massage or going for a manicure or a pedicure or something that is not something that we do very often. So rather than seeing self care as something that we need to incorporate into our daily lives, we leave self care for later when we have an off day or when we're on vacation or when we travel. So then we miss the entire point of self care, which is to really show up for yourself every single day. Self care is largely about prioritizing your needs. And basically, I like to tell people think about it like this: in the same way that you would want someone else to prioritize you, in the same way that you would want someone else to think about your well being in their interactions with you, you need to want that for yourself as well.
Very true. And would you like to share with us some of the different aspects of self-care?
Oh, absolutely. So, firstly, I'll start with physical self care. So, when we're thinking about physical self care, we're thinking about our nutrition. What are we eating? How often are we eating? Because there are lots of us, we're eating the right things, but our daily schedules get so busy and we get so caught up in everything that we have to do that we eat very erratically, which has its own health problems. How often are we going to the doctor to get our checkups? Are we going at least once a year? Are we exercising? Are we even doing stretching? Are we getting enough rest? So all those things fall under physical self-care, sorry. Then we look at emotional self-care. And this is taking care of your emotional well-being. So whether that may be journaling, seeking the professional services of a therapist, a counselor, a coach, using friends as sounding boards, things like that. Paying attention to stressors that will have a negative effect on your emotional well-being. So those are the things that fall under emotional self-care. Then we look at family and relationships, their self-care in those aspects, making sure that you have enough alone time for yourself, as well as balancing that with being social with your friends and with your family. Setting boundaries with friends and family so that you don't feel as though you're being walked over or taken for granted, what have you. There's personal self-care, which is where you honor yourself, be in tune with yourself, listen to, okay, what is it that bothers me, what is it that gets me going, what is it that makes me really happy. Being in tune with those things fall under personal health care. There's financial health care, where we're looking at, are we saving adequately, are we budgeting, are we being responsible with our income and our commitments, things like that. And then there's, of course, self care in the workplace, looking at time management, our interactions with our colleagues, our interactions with our superiors. Again, boundary setting. Are we setting and enforcing boundaries? So, those are the different aspects of self care, which are important to recognize and, of course, hone in on each individual aspect of it to make sure that you're really covering yourself holistically.
All right, sorry. Towards the end, you were, at least on my end, you were buffering a little bit. Okay, so I just wanted to make sure that you were done before I started to speak.
No problem.
So yeah, that's actually real. That's actually some really good information. And Charles Jazzy Harper agrees. He says, great points being shared here. Um, what I find particularly interesting is, yeah, we do say a lot about in our personal lives looking after our health. So we may eat the right foods, we may go on this specific diet, we may decide we're going to exercise, we may save our house for 24 our car. But very often there are some key issues that you raised that we actually don't look at. And I think those have to do with relationships. And relationships have such a big impact on everything we do. So, for example, we talk about, you know, if your significant other cheats on you, you can't eat, things like that. You are at work and you can't get along with your coworkers or you're being stressed out and you start to lose weight, your hair starts to drop out. And so it's so important that we focus on managing our relationships and setting our boundaries. So I'm really glad that you raised them because that has a pretty harmful effect. And I think often we think about NCDs, but we don't necessarily think about the mental and emotional aspect of self-care. So thanks for sharing that. And I think I will start to talk about why it is important. So if you would just continue to say, why is self-care important?
Okay, long story short, stress is a killer. Everybody knows that.
Yes.
I say it repeatedly to my friends when they're stressing out about something that, and neglecting their self care. I say it repeatedly to my patients. I say it to my clients. Stress is a killer. And stress affects all aspects of our well being. It affects us physically. We can't eat. We can't sleep, we're getting heartburn, blood pressure going through the roof. And oftentimes we don't even know the blood pressure is going through the roof because it doesn't cause any symptoms. It affects
Mhm.
us mentally and emotionally. We feel anxious. We can't sleep well. We may be very crabby with the people around us, and we cannot escape stress. Stress is a part of life. But what we can do is manage stress effectively, right? And this is where self care comes in because good self care habits help you to manage stress effectively. A lot of us, when we are faced with a stressor from whatever aspect of life, whether it's relationships, work, financial, what have you, we tend to deal with it in one of two ways. We either decide that we're going to face it head on or we're going to retreat. And usually the way that we retreat is by focusing on something else completely. But we
Mhm.
never stop and ask, okay, what do I need in this moment that I can give to myself? And that's a question that I want everybody who's watching, if you can, write it down, save it in your phone, what have you, because that question should be the bedrock of your self care. Okay. What do I need that I can give to myself in this moment? So that then you bring the focus back to you, because all the small problems that being stressed out causes, the stomach upset, the acid reflux, the high blood pressure, those go from minor annoyances and they snowball and snowball and snowball until they're actually major health problems. And all that could be avoided just by paying attention, honing into, okay, what is happening to me, what is happening around me, and how can I best deal with it? How can I remove myself from it? Sometimes exactly what you need is just to take a breather. Turn off your phone for 30 minutes and just take a breather. Go outside. We are creatures, we are born of nature. We are a part of nature. Sometimes we just need to get back to nature, spend some time in nature.
Mhm.
So there are different things that we can do, just to recenter ourselves and, okay, think calmly and clearly about how we can deal with what is happening at this moment. So self care is very important because without it, we risk, becoming very ill. Stress is a killer. That's just the
Mhm.
long and short of it.
Most definitely. And there are also some really long-term effects that you may not consider. I remember I was at a particular workplace for a very short period of time, but the stress that I experienced there was so much that years after I still felt the effect. So it was kind of like post-traumatic
Stress
stress.
disorder. Yes.
So there are certain things that happened that triggered me, and so I would, whether it work situation or outside of a work situation, I was so triggered that my mind would go back to that work situation. And I remember at first I didn't want to leave the job because I had just started. Um, there were a couple of people that I didn't want to disappoint by giving up. And ultimately, I felt the effects on my own. And that's the thing. Sometimes we spend so much time trying to make other people happy. We really have to ourselves more. And because I neglected to do that at that time, repercussions lasted for several years. And I had to heal from that. So I would encourage you to definitely look into managing your self care effectively. And I'm looking at the comments here, and Charles says, especially the relationship with ourselves. We need to relationship that we have with ourselves. Leslie, is there anything that you want to share on that?
Actually, when you going back to what you said about leaving a job that was so stressful, it actually took me back to my when I completed my internship. as a new doctor,
Mhm.
and there was a ringtone on my phone. And after I left internship and left that hospital, every time I heard that ringtone, it would just take me back and say, "This is
Yeah.
not cool." It's like, why? This is not cool. Why should this even be? Yeah. But in response to Charles's comment, yeah, that's
Mhm.
extremely true. It's our relationship with ourselves. Like we need to be present for ourselves. We need to show up for ourselves because at the end of the day, sometimes we are all we have, right? We there's nobody who has to look after us but us,
Very true.
right? So relationship with self is very, very, very important, and I'm really glad that he raised that.
Mhm. Okay. So, Charles says as well, environments can indeed negatively contribute to poor self-care. And I'm really glad that you said contribute because ultimately we have the option. You know, it is our, everybody doesn't have it easy. It may seem really difficult for some persons. So, a single person with no children, I can decide, okay, I'm leaving. But it's not easy for everybody, but we do have a choice in how we manage our self-care. Our environments do not have um, complete control. And no, you're not over commenting. Thank you so much, Charles. I know that this is your area of interest, so I know that it's something that you're passionate about, so thank you so much for your comments. All right, so let's talk about the correlation between self-care and career success.
Oh wow, that it almost goes without saying. Okay, if you first of all, I'd like to tell people you need to have an idea of what success means for you. Okay,
Yeah.
not what success is as dictated by your society, by the people on your Instagram or Facebook feed, not even by people on your LinkedIn feed. Like, what does
Yeah.
success mean for you? And once you are aware of that, then let's look at how you can move towards that and be your best self. So, if you neglect yourself in terms of your self care, you are constantly working, constantly going because there's this fallacy out there that the more you work, the more successful you will be, which many people, myself included, have proven it's just not true, right? I always say work smarter, not harder. But
True.
we neglect ourselves and we push and we push and we work extra long hours and we're trying to please everybody and we're trying not to disappoint anybody. And then at the end of it, you may have whatever it was that the goal that you had in mind, but then at the same time, you're ill because you're suffering from high blood pressure or you had a TIA, which some people like to call a mini stroke, or some other unfortunate health ailment has affected you, right? Is that success, right? So I think that people need to stop. I come across so many people, especially people in our generation, Run, who are it's like they're on this hamster wheel. They're just going and going and
Yeah.
going and going to try to reach the elusive success because they achieve one goal, but that's still not good enough.
Mm-hmm.
You have to keep going. It's always when I do this, I'm gonna look after myself. You get that thing, and then, well, I need this next. Then I'm gonna look after myself. And you just keep pushing your goal post further and further away, and then you actually never look after yourself. So
Mm-hmm.
where's the success in that?
I agree. I think that's really true. And I mean, like you said, what is success? So yes, we may achieve some measure of career success, but sometimes our families are neglected because of that success. And so you are no use to your family decline in health, or for some reason you aren't able to, make that play, make that basketball game, go outside and play. And I think that those things are really important to they're really important to children. They're really important to family. I mean, you can lose your family chasing that elusive
Yes,
success. And
exactly.
so, you are not one dimensional. And I think sometimes we live in one place. So I am a professional. We define ourselves by um, by our career. And Charles says our identities are not permanent, but we actually exist. We have different identities in different places. So we're mother or father, we're daughter, we're employee, we're friend. So we're so many different things, and we wear so many different hats, and so much of our focus is on career success at times that we don't nurture or care for those other areas in our lives. We don't care enough for ourselves,
Mhm.
to be able to give enough to those areas of our lives. And what ends up happening is that we don't have success in any area, or we have the
Exactly.
money that we are looking for and we're not able to enjoy it. So yeah, that's actually very interesting. I love that you brought up, what is success.
Yeah. And if
And
we look
Deanne, sorry, go
sorry,
ahead.
if
Oh,
we
no,
look at
no.
the breakdown again of what I said in terms of the different aspects of self-care, if you look at, like you mentioned, financial, you might have financial success, but again, as you said, your family, your interpersonal relationships are broken. You may have financial success, but in your workplace, like there's things just aren't going well, right? That's not successful. As far as personal or physical, you have financial success, but you're overweight because you spend so much time working that you can't eat nutritious meals or you don't have time to exercise. So, as you correctly said, like we are multidimensional human beings, and you can't just look at one particular area and focus on that and decide that you're not going to neglect everything else or get back to it when you've attained this one thing.
Hmm. And when you talked about personal relationships, one of the things that really stood out to me is the whole idea of emotional intelligence and being empathetic, being self-aware, you know, self-management, and how we can use that to nurture our personal relationships. And if we don't do those things, even if we hit all of our sales goals in the workplace, example, and we have negative interactions with our coworkers, then at the end of the day, we still don't have a good reputation at work, and we may consider ourselves to be successful, but other people, you know, they look at us as what's a nice word to say, a horrible person. So yeah, so it's like, but again, it comes down to values, because sometimes people don't care about these things.
True.
Um, but I think ultimately it tells on you. I think at the end of the day, at the end of people's life, you may
Mhm.
not think about these things right now. At the end of people's lives, often they think about it, And so when we talk about nurturing it, nurturing your relationships, nurturing your family, um, nurturing yourself, we have to think about the long-term effects as well,
Hmm.
just like
And
we
you
would
said,
with our finances.
yeah, and you said,
Go ahead.
some people might not care about it, but I'm not even fully convinced of that. I think that some
I'm
people
not
have
either.
mastered the art of pretending like they don't care about those things or like those things don't matter. But I don't, because of how human nature is, I just find it hard to believe that somebody would really honestly not care about something like that. I just think that they may be so laser focused on what they want to be focused on that they put those things on the back burner. But yeah, I completely agree with you.
Was an interesting. I would really love your insight, and we have some questions in the comments. But I really would like your insight from a palliative care perspective. Now,
Mhm.
you deal with a lot of persons at the end of their lives. Um, so you get the opportunity to interact with them. And have you ever heard of people expressing regrets about not taking care of themselves?
I have repeatedly, over and over and over. I've had people say to me, at the end of the day, I have all these things surrounding me, but they mean nothing now. They're not helping me now. I have fractured relationships with my family. Like, and I see that repeatedly. Like, it was mind blowing to me when I first started palliative care, how common that is. Yeah, we all just, there's so many of us who focus on the wrong things throughout our lives. And then it takes being on a deathbed for you to recognize that, I should have paid more attention to myself. I should have gone to the doctor yearly. It's quite sad and it's unfortunate. And I hope that events such as this will get people to clue in and realize, I probably need to think more about how I'm looking after myself, if not for me, or for my children or for my family, what have you.
And even if not for your children or your family, let's put it in perspective of business. For your business.
For
Because if
your
you don't take
business.
care of yourself, you know,
Yeah.
but I'm not saying that's the most important thing. All right. So let's, we're saying, so let's look at our questions. And I'm going to go to Deanne's question first. Deanne says, can Dr. Reese address topic out and the different ways in which it manifests in different people based on her experience?
Yay. Thank you for this question, Deanne. I'm glad that you asked it. I was hoping that somebody would ask it actually. So, what is burnout exactly? Burnout usually is the result of absent self-care in any sphere, in any aspect. And it usually results from people not looking after themselves, trying very hard not to disappoint others, refusing to set boundaries, refusing to enforce boundaries that they may have set. And it usually manifests as sometimes people become very disengaged, some people become very negative, some people stop sleeping, they stop eating, lose weight. It may manifest with physical symptoms such as the same heartburn, acid reflux, stomach aches, constant headaches. I myself have suffered from burnout in the past. And it, as a doctor myself, I know what burnout is. I've diagnosed burnout in other people, but it took me going to my own doctor to be told that I was suffering from burnout. And it was really interesting to me because here I am, a proponent of self care, and I was not looking after myself in the way that I should have been because I didn't want to disappoint others. I didn't want to disappoint my patients, my clients, the people who I felt were dependent on me, but I was disappointing myself. So there are different ways that burnout can present itself. Sometimes it could be very insidious because a lot of the symptoms are very similar to depression, for instance, or anxiety. So it doesn't surprise me if a lot of people out there are being misdiagnosed as having depression or having anxiety when really and truly what is going on is that they're burnt out. I was unfortunate. I remember because I have friends who live in first world countries like the UK and the US and so. And when I told them about my diagnosis, their question was, okay, so what's the plan? Are you going to take 3 months off in Barbados? I, we can't take
Really?
we can't take 3 months off. And like that was a standard burnout leave, especially my friend in the UK told me that. Hey, that's standard. That's leave for burnout. I mean, I wish I could, but I couldn't. So I had to find other ways while working to get past that. And I'm happy to say, and I thank God that I got past it. But I mean, that really was a wake up call for me. And I think that every experience is good experience in that that's an experience that I had that I can now share with others and help others who may find themselves in similar situations. I say I've been there. I can relate to you. I can't say I know how you feel because everybody's experience is different, but I can relate to you in some way.
Okay, cool. Thank you. I hope that answers your question, Deanne. Can we get another comment or question? Okay, so we'll end that part. Currently managing career, family, and aging parents. My goodness. I still try my best to avoid stress as much as possible. Great discussion, ladies. Thank you so much for joining us. It sounds like you have your hands full, and I hope that this session really um, gives you some encouragement and equips you with some tools to better manage your self-care. Thanks so much. We have another comment here from Charles. Even the idea of a work-life balance, which prioritizes work. Agreed.
Yeah, that's
I don't know
absolutely
what to
true.
do with that.
And
Yeah.
yeah, I actually would like to take this opportunity to say that there are ways that organizations and businesses can help their employees as far as self-care goes. There are ways that they can foster good self-care practices, and it's not something that's going to necessarily cost you tons of money to implement, and it's going to serve you for so long going forward in terms of the improved productivity from your workforce, in terms of the decrease decreased amounts of leaves of absences from your employees, because stressed employees are going to become sick employees and they're going to stay home, and that's not something that you would have planned for necessarily. So I'm really glad that Charles made that comment, because yeah, work-life balance tends to prioritize work.
Would you mind giving us some actual um, practical tips on things that organizations can do? I remember actually a couple of years ago, I was involved in an initiative at my workplace where we took place in a nice 100 improvements in 100 days. And one of the things that we worked on was personal development. And so we did things like, making sure that everybody drank more water. So there was like a competition for that, not eating meat on certain days. Um, we had pedometers to measure, our steps. But what are some other ways that companies can make sure that we engage in self-care at work. Well, engage in self-care, period, not just at
Period.
work.
Yeah, but
Yeah.
especially at work. So there's certain things that organizations can implement to promote self-care at work and to support self-care at work. So one of them, for instance, is to encourage log off and shutdown times, where you say, okay, your work day is from, let's say your work day is from 8 a.m. to 5 p.m. So outside of, if you want to give a little more leeway, outside of 7 a.m. to 6 p.m., we expect that you're not logged on. We expect that your devices are shut down. And it's expected and we support it, right? Then things like discouraging employees from having lunch at their workstations. It's amazing to me how many employees I know who sit at
Mhm.
their desks and have lunch, right? So there's no real break for them. And a lot of the time, yes, this is self imposed by the employee themselves, but the organization, the managers, they're not doing anything to say, we don't want you to do this. We want you to spend your lunch away from your desk. Do something
Mhm.
else with your lunch period that has absolutely nothing to do with work, that relaxes you, that gives you that mental break, whether it's listening to music, listening to a podcast, what have you. I have to say that within my office, nobody's allowed to have lunch at their desk, one. And number two, every single person, whenever they're on their lunch break, they're either listening to music, watching funny videos online, watching a series, what have you, but everybody's disconnecting. And every time I see that, I'm so proud of them because that's exactly what you need. That's a form of self-care, right? Um, Encourage employees to include pauses in their day, whether it's 5 minutes, 7 minutes, 10 minutes. Get up, take a walk, go have a drink of water, go outside for a minute or two, just to have, I see a comment there. So standard to have lunch at the desk. That's so true. But yeah, just encourage pauses and breaks so that one, you break up the monotony of whatever it is that you're doing. You reset, you refocus, you come back more alert, it increases your focus. So those are things that we need to do. Mental health days need to be, okay? Like, just- I'm just putting that
Technically,
men-
amen.
mental health days need to be a thing, right? But I think that a part of one of the problems that we may face here, especially in our society in Barbados, is there anything surrounding the word mental has a stigma attached to it. So somebody saying that they're taking a mental health break, you get the whispers, the what have you, what was wrong with her, whatever. It could never be that they're just taking a break so that something doesn't go wrong. Right? So that needs to be something that is standard across the board. I mean, companies could leave it at their discretion how often they're willing to give an employee a mental health break, but just one day, even in a month, or one day every 2 months, just, and we're respecting it because we're not contacting the person while they're on their mental health day to ask them about a project that they're working on, or to say that so and so called and we need to know what to tell them. That can wait until tomorrow. So how about we do that? Yeah.
I
Um,
actually had an experience with. Sorry, go ahead.
Go ahead. Go on. Go on. No, no, no. Go on.
I thought you were finished. Oh no, I actually had an experience at work, which was really funny, but not really. Where I called in sick, and my boss was like, "You don't sound sick to me," and I was like, "Yes." Like, should I put on my sick voice next time I call? It's
Exactly.
like it's like I have to sound weak and like I'm about to faint or like cough or something for it to be taken seriously for a sick day. So I can't even like be actually physically ill and take care of myself without sounding like I am sick. It's absolutely crazy.
Yeah,
But at the
that's
end of the
pretty big.
day, again, it comes back to us taking responsibility for ourselves because that might discourage somebody. Somebody may say, okay, well, next time I'm sick, I'm going to work. But I think also we have this culture in Barbados, and I found it to be really interesting when I worked. Although I've seen it change here somewhat, but I remember when I worked in the U.S. As soon as somebody coughed, they're like, "Okay, go home," because nobody wants to get sick. In Barbados, your eyes can be running, you can be sneezing. I think only since COVID, right? People have really taken things like that seriously where they're like,
Yep.
okay, no, I don't want to get sick, so please don't come into work.
Yeah.
But it's like your head could be throbbing, but they want you there.
Hmm.
So there's a lot that organizations really need to think about. And our the profits of an organization are linked to productivity, which is linked to our self-care.
Of
Because if we
course.
take care of ourselves, we're better able to give to the organization. And then the organization provides a space where we can do that. I know that I would feel more committed. So
Yeah,
yeah, so
exactly.
let's look at. Oh, do you have anything to say before comments?
I just also wanted to say that,
Katrina has a question.
oh,
Go ahead. Sorry.
oh, no problem. I wanted to say,
There's a
employees need to make it. Yeah, employees need, not employees, organizations need to make it standard to have wellness check-ins with their employees, whether that's done through the HR manager, whether they hire a corporate coach such as myself to do that for them. But that's important, just to make sure that your employees are where they need to be as far as their self-care goes, because as you rightly said, Rowan, it does correlate directly with your productivity and your profits.
All right, so Katrina Aline, who also went to primary school with us. Hi, Katrina. That's my girl. So she says many persons who have gynecological issues tend to find self-care as a task because even though many want to be active, etc., weight gain is one of the major challenges due to meds. How does one begin to accept that self-care is paramount? She kind of continues that in the next comment. Um, so I guess her question is, how do we approach self-care when you have gynecological issues? And I would say that Katrina is the founder of the Katrina and Metriosis Foundation Association in Barbados.
Hi, Katrina. Thank you for your question or your comment. What I would say is I'd actually take it a little further from just persons with gynecological issues, persons with any health issues. It can be harder, and I've seen it. It can be harder to come to grips with, okay, how do I engage in self-care? You're not always feeling up to it, and it could be a greater task for you than it would be for somebody else who doesn't have the health issues that you do. What I would say, and again, I can say this to my patients, is what feels good for you. So, for instance, you mentioned weight gain, Katrina, and we tend to use things like BMI measurements and so on. Yes, those are good guides, but if you have someone who is really, really doing their best, they are eating as well as they can, they are exercising as much as they can, and as much as their illness will allow them to. For me, it's about asking them, okay, what is the goal that where you will feel good about yourself, right? And let's focus on that as opposed to having a standard goal that we apply to everyone, which may just be unattainable for them, right?
Yeah.
So in terms of self-care, it has to be about you. Remember, self-care is about prioritizing you and prioritizing how you feel emotionally, physically, right? Not what a book says that you should feel like, or not what a book says that you should look like, or how heavy you should be, or how often you should be doing whatever. And you will know within yourself if, okay, am I just shirking this, or can I really not do any better than this? Is this the best for me? So I think that's the most important thing. What is it for you? You be the goalpost, not somebody else.
I love that. I think that that is so important. And Charles agrees. He says, yes, well said about the BMIs. Because how often we use other people's standards for our successes.
Yeah.
So this person is accepted by society. This person is well known. This person has this body that we would love to have. And so there's all of these external things that we look at for validation. And, sometimes you just really need to look inward.
Mhm.
And it's not that we don't have goals, but I think we need to be satisfied in some cases, nor limitations, and become content where it is necessary. And obviously, where we can do way better, not be too hard on ourselves. Because I think often we're really hard on ourselves when it comes to self-care, when it comes to, attaining success. Yeah, we set these really unrealistic goals for ourselves. I'm really glad that you mentioned that. Even things like finances, we think, okay, the world tells us that we're supposed to own a home, or that we're supposed to have a certain amount of money in our bank account. And if we don't have that, we're under so much stress.
Mhm.
And everybody's life is not the same. Everybody does not have access to the same education, have access to the same generational wealth. Everybody doesn't have the same access to the word just went out of my mind, but everybody doesn't have the same access. And so, but Charles says we guilt and shame ourselves. He's talking about body image, but we also do that with our finances. And we
We
guilt and shame
do.
ourselves
We
because
do.
we're not where we think that we should be. And everybody's journey is different. And I can tell you from personal experience, I remember I had a friend. I was in my 20s. She was about 10 years older than I was. And I remember she could afford to buy a car cash. And she was like, we were just having a conversation over ice cream. She was like, I'm never buying a car um, through monthly payments again. I'm just going to buy a car cash. Right? She was talking about a new car. And I was like, wow. And I remember at that time, I had a significant other. And I remember she said to me, yeah, but I wish that I could trade places with you in that area. And so sometimes the things that we do not nurture, and I'm not saying that I did not nurture my significant other, do not go about telling for that Brian is that kind of person. But, but sometimes the things that we don't appreciate or nurture, somebody else that has what we want, they want what we have. So it's
Correct.
just really interesting.
You
Yeah.
know, a
So
huge part of
right.
self-care is having compassion for yourself, right? And we
Yes.
need to practice that more. We need to practice giving ourselves more grace. Yeah. And we also need to remember that comparison is a thief of joy. So stop comparing ourselves to others whose journeys are very, very different. And as you rightly said, Rowan, very often you are beating yourself up or feeling very poorly about yourself in one aspect, and somebody else is looking at you and saying, I wish I had what she has. So it's all about perspective, and it really comes down to, your focus needs to be on you. Your priority needs to be you at the end of the day.
And go ahead.
No, I was finished my point.
Oh, see, it was buffering. Like
Yeah, it's
I
this
was so
buffering thing.
confused. Okay. Okay. So hi, Claire. Claire says everyone doesn't have the same access to resources. Thank you. That's exactly what I was trying to say. And she is also a fellow Hainsbury Queen. So this is Claire Headley. Anybody in the comments who went to school at Hainsbury who was one of those very special Hainsbury queens who had that very special Hainsbury smile, feel free to say hi in the comments. All right. So let me get to the final question. Now, we've talked about self-care within the context of our personal relationships. Um, we've looked at it in terms of our personal health. We've looked at it with respect to the workplace. So let's look at it from the perspective of our nation. Now, we know that we constantly hear about the effect of poor productivity in the workplace on our economy. It's said that Bajans aren't productive enough. And so people from other islands, close your ears. But people from other countries, but that's what's being said. And as a country that's highly dependent on services, it's really important for us to be. It's really important for us to take care of ourselves so that we can take care of our customers, so that we can remain economically viable. And there's so many NCDs that we talked about, and those things are causing absenteeism and obesity and all these different things. I heard recently, I'm not sure how accurate it is, that there's consideration that mental health may actually be considered. Um, they're considering making mental health an NCD. Don't quote me on it. But so as it relates to self-care on the product and the productivity of our country, I'd like to share a little bit about that.
Sure, absolutely. Well, I see it every day in practice
Mm-hmm.
where we have people who are very, very, very stressed. And, it's a feedback mechanism, it's a vicious cycle where, as you said, decreased productivity is going to have effects on the economy. They, if we have an economy that's shrinking, then puts us into a recession, people become more stressed, less productivity. And it just keeps going around and around and around like that. I see
Yeah.
people come into my office and they are absolutely stressed out. Right? They're not looking after themselves. They feel as though they cannot afford many of the things that, we consider to be basic needs in terms of self-care. So buying fruits and vegetables, lots of people see as being too expensive, or having a gym membership, people see as too expensive, and it might not occur to them, okay, well, I could go walking on the road and still be exercising, going to the doctor regularly. There recently, I've been seeing lots and lots of people who are, spacing their appointments out. They have non-communicable diseases like diabetes, high blood pressure. You're supposed to be seen at a particular interval, and they space it out just because they simply feel as though they cannot afford to come to the doctor as regularly as they should, which of course is going to have negative impacts on their disease. And you suggest to somebody who would come in with an injury or an illness or something, okay, I think that you need to take time off. And I would say at least 75% of the people that I see refuse sick leave because they just feel pressure. They feel as though they're going to be letting down their coworkers or letting down their managers or what have you if they take sick leave. So people are going to work sick, which is making them sicker. If it's something that is contagious, they're making other people sick, right? So you just keep getting this feedback loop, feedback loop, feedback loop. And I think it's important for the powers that be to come out and make self-care and looking after ourselves something that's a priority. It needs to start at the top. People need to feel as though their employers understand that they need to take a couple of days off to look after themselves. People need to feel as though their employers understand that they may need to step out to go to an appointment for a few minutes to look after themselves. People need to feel as though they have that leeway. And once they feel like that, then, things get done. They're looking after themselves, and at the end of the day, productivity goes back to where it should be. Rowan dropped out.
Hi guys, can you hear me?
I can.
Look at how my internet wants to embarrass me. All right. Amy, are you finished what you were saying?
Hey,
Okay. Sorry, guys. My sister's holiday is take a few more questions. Mia says, or statements rather. Mia says, employee will even cringe to take 15 minutes of the company's time to take a break for themselves, or are so willing to give an additional half hour to a full hour after working hours. That is
correct.
so true. But
Correct.
I think a lot of it has to do with the psychological contract of the organization. So it's like you go into the organization and it's not explicitly said, but you see other people there who are working late, bosses are working late, and to leave early feels kind of weird. You don't want to be that person who doesn't seem to be committed to the organization. And a lot of times, you hear people saying things like, I'm a workaholic, and they wear it as a badge of honor, and all these different things. And, it's because, again, these are things that people view and think, okay, this is what I need to be, this is who I need to be in order to show that I'm committed to an organization. So Mia, you are absolutely correct.
Yeah.
All right. Let's see your comments. Shelly. Hi, Shelly. She says, giving oneself more grace is powerful and prioritizing oneself is important, which is exactly what Lesley has been saying in this podcast. Self-care is not selfishness. I love that. Putting on your oxygen mask first so you can deal with others. I am actively learning this. Yep, that is so important. It is so important. All right. And Charles, having workplace wellness policies that focus on employees being healthy mentally, emotionally, and physically will improve productivity.
Absolutely.
Perfect. Well, guys, thank you so much for joining us. Oh, we have another comment. Acceptance is key. It does not negate pursuing improvement. However, it helps to remember each one of us is on a different journey. And again, that is so important. I think that that's in relation to Katrina's question and what you said about, doing what's best for you, what your best is. All right. So I was getting really excited because I was like, oh my goodness, I'm going to be finished in an hour. This never happens. But we have gone over. But I'm working on this year because we get so carried away with conversations because the conversations are usually so good. And we have some great engagement from our audience. But I am so thankful for our audience, being here, participating this evening. You are on Facebook, LinkedIn, or YouTube. Thank you so much. Dr. Lesley Reece, I thank you so much for being here and sharing with us about self-care. Could you let us know where we can reach you and what services you offer?
Sure. So I offer individual self-care coaching. The focus is on self-care, self-love, and boundary setting. The latter being something that I find that lots of people have issues with in terms of being able to effect it. So, and we've spoken about the relationship between self-care and success. So that's my aim when you work with me, for me to get you to a point where you are really achieving your idea of success. I also do corporate coaching where I can work with organizations to help to develop an office culture of self-care practices. If you want more information on that or on my individual coaching, feel free to email me at info at lesleyreece.com. My Lesley is spelled Lesley, Reece, REECE.com. Or you can visit my page, lesleyreece.com. And you'll find lots of information there as well as ways to contact me.
All right. Well, thank you so much for taking the time to share with us. It was really great having you here. It's always great spending time with you. And to our audience, you're welcome. To our audience, we look forward to seeing you next month where we have more noble conversations about really interesting topics in business. Take care and good night. Bye.